I really appreciate you listening to the podcast here. Let's go get started. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's podcast. It is Tuesday, August 13th, 2024, and I'm hoping this podcast actually endures because I spent my weekend working on something that I hope everybody, regardless of who you support in this election, in any election ever, I'm hoping this will help anybody who's wanted to figure out how to get involved in campaigns, how to start, where to start, what you could do, don't want to overcommit, all those things that go through your head if you're thinking about participating. And in order to participate, you got to know what to do. So I spent the weekend, I'm so excited, building something I'm calling the PACE assessment. Yeah, if you make something, you get to name it. And I don't know about the name, but I do love what it does. And it's very simple, and it's a little bit old school, so you're going to have to bear with me. But what I have for you today in the podcast is essentially a job board of the ways you can engage, civic engagement, right? Volunteer, some positions pay, but mostly volunteer. That's how it works. This is American democracy. Our civic engagement, our volunteering is an important part of who we are as Americans. So that's a big part of what we'll talk about today. But I'm going to share with you the job board and then the assessment, the PACE assessment, which is your political and campaign engagement assessment. PACE, political and campaign engagement assessment. The PACE assessment is designed to help you answer a few questions. It's just very Cosmo, like you take the quiz and then based on your score, you get an indication of where you want to engage. What I was concerned about is a lot of folks have maybe a disability or long COVID or something like that might prevent them from engaging in all the things. Other people have access to a lot of resources and or are up for a big adventure. So the job board really takes all that into account. And that's what I threw into the assessment. So based on answers to some of the basic questions about volunteering and participating, you will get a list of recommendations. It's not like an app. You're not going to get a list of recommendations. You have to read the list of recommendations. This is in fact old school, but you can read the list of recommendations and get an idea of where to start. The last part of this is because I'm trying to be nonpartisan and I just want to get everybody involved because that's what's really good for us as Americans is to have everybody involved. I'm going to try to do, and I haven't done this yet, so this will be something I'll do this afternoon, but I'm going to try to do a table with very good Google searches of each kind of thing on this job board for red and blue, and if I can find generic or other, I'm going to do that too, because I know there are more than two candidates. I get it. And every election, it could change, but I want to try to give you a good place to look for where you can begin your engagement. So it's a three-parter in that regard, but most of it will be engaged with my blog. And so I'll put a link to go to the blog and you can get more of those tools at the blog and you can take this assessment at the blog. Yes, it is old school, but let's start first with finding your perfect campaign role and talk about what's on the big job board when it comes to participating in a campaign. This is not exhaustive. These are I'm talking about the kinds of things today that I've personally done, my friends have done. I've done a lot of these things because, like I said, I grew up as a political kid. I ran for, if you guys want to really nerd out, I was class president. I was in leadership. I'm like, everything that's the cliche about Jen Carroll is just true. You know, I did all that stuff. I am the firstborn female in what I call a Gen X family because I was the oldest and at the end of the boomers, but essentially since I had younger siblings, I absolutely had a Gen X existence. Also, my parents got divorced and we were so latchkey, it's not even funny. So the point is, I've done these things and I want to try to witness my excitement and share that with you. So you'll at least put a toe in the water. I don't care what did I have last night? I thought I was so clever. I don't care if you sit on the right, sit on the left, just don't sit on your hands. And don't sit out. I want you to be involved if you can handle it. So the easiest first job on the job board is being a personal brand endorser. And what this really means is showing your support by putting a sign in your yard, putting clothing on your body, a shirt, a cap, putting a sticker on your car or your laptop. The idea is you are taking the first step in announcing, here's who I support. And that comes with risks and rewards. I drive around town with my car and I wrote, I dissent on the back window. I happen to be in a really liberal town, so it's pretty low risk activity. But you understand, take my meaning, please. Please look around and see where you are. This is not intended for you to take unnecessary risks or to get hurt. And I shouldn't even have to say that sentence. But unfortunately, civic engagement today, right now, and we're going to change this. Don't worry, it's going to return. I hope we're going to get back to where safety is normal, just normal. But right now, when you are doing a brand endorsement, just putting that sign out and or wearing that shirt or that hat, or putting that sticker on your laptop so at the coffee shop somebody notices, that could be a real risk. And I'm proud of you if you take it. So that's the easiest way. And the reason that's such an important form of engagement, I'm all about brand. Like that's in my DNA because I do brand marketing. So branding to me is really important. But what you're really doing is a kind of elementary halo effect of saying what I stand for includes this thing, this campaign. My morals and values and who I am as a person are represented by this campaign. That's really what a brand, your personal brand endorsement means. And you can read some terrific stories. I happen to hang out on Twitter because I don't know, it's noisy and I kind of like that kind of noise. But you will see a lot of posts from people who said, I wore my shirt today and I can't believe so-and-so talked to me. Or I put the yard sign out and people are smiling when they walk by. So you know your context, you know your values, you know what you're standing for. But this is the easiest way to stick your toe in. And interestingly enough, in the 2020 election, just the last election, yard signs and bumper stickers weren't just symbols of support. They were powerful visual reminders of the election's outcome and that it mattered to individuals. And if you remember, one thing that the Trump campaign activated like crazy, was signs, flags, all that stuff. I'm not sure if it's my taste, but the thing is, they're very good at activating all that that noise. That got a lot of attention. So there you go, your personal brand. The second job you could do is, and this one I've done, and I like it. I like it because I think I'm clever. That's why I like it. Is sending postcards. And this is a personal way. It's more hands-on. You send postcards to voters directly, and essentially there are websites where they set you up, they give you the lists, and they usually give you what to write on the cards. That's the part, of course, I struggle with, right? Because I'm a smarty pants. I want to write my own cards. They don't really like that because they've tested the messages. Believe me, they've tested the messages. So I know if I stray, I'm essentially defeating all the work that they've done, because campaign strategy, really A/B test. A/B test means the difference between one message and another. They A/B test everything. So when they give you the words to put on the postcards, they know what they're doing. There's usually room for you to add something personal, though, to make that personal connection with the person you're sending the card to. So getting this handwritten note, and we typically target swing states. In a presidential campaign, we target swing states. In a local campaign, you might target people so that they know when that comes through with your name on it. That's a lot of times when just a donation gets you on the campaign's literature. By making it, I didn't even talk about money here because these are all ways to use your human body to participate. But making donations, especially when they're visible, is another way to use your brand endorsement. So postcards are fun. They're either to remind people to vote, to get them to vote, to persuade them to vote for a candidate or an issue that you're concerned with. And in the 2018 midterm elections, so this is between when Trump ran in 2016 and when he reran in 2020. So we're during the Trump presidency, but the midterm elections, if you recall, those were quite active. Thousands of volunteers participated in postcard campaigns, sending handwritten notes to voters in swing states. And these personal touches contributed to record voter turnout and helped tip the scales in several close races. So you're just helping build that momentum with postcards. And you can do them on your own time. You could do them while you're watching TV. You could do them while you watch your child play Little League. Oh no, it's fall. Plays the football game, the little Pee-wee football. You can, sorry, I couldn't think of that. Girls play Pee-wee football too. So what am I talking about? You can do it when you're at work on your break, or you just want something to do while you don't want to work. Boring meeting. a Zoom meeting. I just lowered my voice because I don't want my overlords to hear me. So that's how you can do postcards. The next thing you can do, and again, each of these increases in risk a little bit as well, is social media advocacy. So the upside of social media is we all have our tribes, right? The people that follow us and that we follow. And we usually, if you're doing social media right, you are comfortable with your tribe. So you spreading the things you believe in with your tribe is really good. The key here is to be trustworthy and generally positive. Now, positive doesn't mean lame. I don't want you to be glib and happy and lame. That's off-putting as well. That's like sugar-coated yuckiness, too much sweet. You really want to be positive. So even if you're correcting misinformation, you're doing it in a positive way. Like, I just want you to know, or it's important to note, all of those things. That's the positive. That's the positive part. So you can reach hundreds, if not thousands of people by sharing reliable info. I'm going to have the hiccups now. That's what's going to happen to me. By sharing reliable information, debunking misinformation, and please go listen to my low-key fact-finding podcast. If you haven't listened to that, I did that yesterday. Anyway, debunking misinformation and promoting your candidate or the campaign on the platform of your choice. Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, you know them all. There's so many out there now. And social media advocacy is really compelling because you can do it whenever you want. Super flexible. You can do a lot of it or a little of it. You can absolutely tell if I've had a busy day or a light day based on how engaged I am at Twitter at the end of the day. I tend to get on around 7 o'clock and just read. I just want to, I go out there and kind of get the pulse of the culture in the evenings, but it's up to you. And it's interesting because in the 2020 election, again, this is the election Biden versus Trump, social media became a huge battleground for information and influence. And grassroots activists typically use these platforms for organizing, educating, and mobilizing voters. And they did it amazingly well in 2020. That's one of the ways Biden won, right? We got out the vote for those people that wanted to see that election go with Biden. But what you really need to know is that social media is really your chance to make a difference and engage with people and control and have a controlled way to engage. Okay. And I'm all over social media, you know me. Phone banking for direct voter engagement. This is pretty fun if you like this kind of thing. So it's a way to engage one-on-one with voters. It involves calling potential voters to discuss the issues or answer questions, and really fundamentally to encourage them to vote. I'm going to always encourage people to vote, because the thing is, when people get to the polls, it's private and they can make any choice they want, but they got to get out. And this engagement in our democracy is how you understand how important it is and why it's worth fighting for. That's why I'm doing this podcast. I want you to know our democracy is worth fighting for in whatever flavor you want it to be, however that works. But it is that melting pot, right? And that's what's so cool. So I did phone banking for a candidate in Alaska, who, by the way, pulled some shady stuff recently, and I'm a little ticked off, but it was fun. I haven't talked to a lot of people in Alaska before. And so, I'm the kind of person that can go in the store and end up talking to somebody for 20 minutes. So I had to manage myself and be aware that I wasn't there to just take all their time and do a long form interview with somebody who I'm trying to get to go vote. That's not the job, Jen. But I really enjoyed talking to people in Alaska. I just don't know their experience, so it was really fun. In 2008, Barack Obama's campaign used phone banking in a massive way to mobilize voters, particularly in swing states. And again, just my deepest sympathy to any person in a swing state listening right now, because I don't live in a swing state, and I know you guys are just bombarded. And here I'm telling everybody all the ways to bombard you again. But this time, own your future. You can be part of the phone banking yourself. So I want you to know phone banking is a fun way to go. Just pace yourself, be prepared, but it is fun. The next one I have done super locally, which is canvassing. Canvassing is going door to door. Now, this is interesting because some people think this is kind of hostile to go knock on somebody's door. Because I'm older, I guess, I know it's a really cool part of campaigning, especially with local elections. I got to say, for a presidential election, I'm a little less interested, mostly because it feels a little more abstract. But when in local elections, canvassing means you could actually be going door to door with going with the candidate, or you know the candidate personally, so you can actually speak to why they're exciting. Now, canvassing for presidential election could be really important, especially to mobilize votes. And I believe his name is Zeke Taylor. I've got to go look, but I think he's a doctor. And he's canvassing all the time when he's not doctoring. If I can find him, I'll link it in this in my blog, just so you can see who I'm talking about. But this man, he's a beast, and he canvasses all the time. So canvassing's been a cornerstone of campaigns for decades. But in 2016, so that is the who ran Hillary versus Donald election in 2016, Bernie Sanders' grassroots campaign relied heavily on canvassing to spread his message, which is actually not a bad way to go because he really wanted to reach younger voters. So canvassing, if you think about it, if you're hitting campuses, dorms, or areas where, midtowns where a lot of youth and younger people hang out, it's not a bad idea. The next one is for every person out there, for every Miss Daisy out there, there's somebody needs a driver. And one of the problems we have for some folks is that people need help getting to the polls. You've read about it. You know they've closed down polling places. They've made them hard to get to. I believe there's one whole Indian reservation that I'm not going to get this right, but I feel like they had to travel 150 miles to get to a polling place because their local polling place was shut down. Now that's weird because it's an Indian reservation and I don't know why they can't have a polling place on the reservation. I probably need to do my homework there. And if anybody knows about that, I'd love to know more. But driving people to get to the vote, is important. And if you have a big car, make it a party. You can have the most fun being an unpaid Uber driver and actually have a hoot while you're doing it. And here's an example. In the 2020 election, there was the grassroots organization like Souls to the Polls that happened in the South, where volunteers organized rides to polling stations, ensuring everyone who wanted the vote had an opportunity to do so. It also contributed to record turnout in crucial states. The reason driving people to the polls has suddenly become so important is that a lot of mail-in voting has been stopped. It's ridiculous. I don't know why you wouldn't want to have mail-in voting. By far, to me, it's the easiest thing to do. It reduces the risk of COVID because voting's always in November when everybody's sick. And plus, I love voting by mail because, like I've mentioned in the past, my whole family, we would sit down and talk about it. We had this thing where we go to the IHOP because they have free refills and cheap food and good cheap food. And we'd sit there, and they also have ginormous booths. So we'd sit there and spread out all the papers. And as the kids got older, kids being Katie's friends, and they started to vote, I'd bring them along with me. Like, let's all go. My mom loved participating in that. There's nothing like her geezer power to give us history, insights, what happened when. It was so fun. So driving has become an important part of our process because mail-in ballots are not always available to everybody. All right, so you've moved on from driving. You're ready to join the team and formalize your role. Guess what? You can become part of a local campaign team, and campaign teams work very much like you might expect in a parent-child relationship. So your municipality, your county might have a committee that's aligned around your candidate. Then you're likely to have a regional and or state committee, and you can join at a state level. A lot of people join at a state level and eventually become delegates, which is kind of a cool path. We'll talk about that later in the podcast because that's a cool way to participate at a much different level. Actually, we'll talk about it probably during the convention next week. And then you can then move on to national level where you go work at a national campaign. But right now, if you just want to see how campaigns work, just join something locally. You get to strategize and think about the goals. It's inclusive. You'll probably make friends. And if you think this is something you want to do in your career, it's a great opportunity to start building your network and getting contacts and finding out all and learning about all aspects of the campaign to find out what you want to do specifically. Like for me, messaging, writing, right up my alley. I love being a one-to-many. Like I like doing something that can get the maximum value of what I've done, which is of course why I end up podcasting, because it's broadcasting, right? And I can do one-to-many. That's like just my preference, but you might be a really good influencer at a very deep level, or you might really be good at events. Man, do I suck at events. Anybody who knows me does not let me near the event. They'd invite me to come when it's ready, but they don't let me anywhere near the plans because I am just so bad at it. Like I'd have the event and forget, I don't know, the mixers. That would be me because I would be so focused on everything else. So in 2020 on Joe Biden's campaign, volunteers at a local level, listen to this. This is a presidential campaign lean in on a local level. They helped organize rallies, phone banks, and canvassing efforts. So at the campaign level, you will then supervise volunteers and help them do the things we've already talked about. And then quite possibly, and Mark Elias is really calling on everyone to get involved here. We want to safeguard our voting process. So the last area where you could get involved, and I've got to look at this for myself because I've done it before. It's pretty darn fun, because you see a lot of your friends, but it's being a poll worker, actually working at the poll. So we did it. I brought Katie, and it turned out my neighbors, just 2 houses down, and I had no idea this is true. As a family, they've been doing this for years. So when we got there, it was the night of the election. We were actually part of the ballot counting crew, because I really wanted Katie to be exposed to the behind the scenes part. In walks Justin and Na, our neighbors. And they've been doing this forever. Like they know Gail, our head of our elections. I happen to know Gail because I went to Leadership Santa Cruz. But Gail Pellerin's there, and she knows my neighbors. We had a great time. All I can say is working behind the scenes and seeing how your local election office works and how you do it. Because then when you hear the stories on the news, you're like, we didn't do anything like that. Why is that so weird? And let me just I'm going to do a brief soapbox here really quick. One of the reasons our democracy is so strong, and you really need to get this because it's very important. And it comes from, I'm going to talk about it in terms of resiliency, which is a term we use all the time in cybersecurity. Resiliency really means in this kind of context, and especially with technology involved or something like ballots. Resiliency means if something goes wrong, you can still execute the task. So if there's an earthquake, you can still move cars from Los Angeles to Santa Monica. If there's a power outage, you can still manage to get people to cooling centers because you have generators. This is the idea of, really understanding these connections. So as a poll worker, what we want to make sure is that, what we want to make sure is our elections are diverse in terms of their process. When you think, why aren't we all doing it the same? I do think there are some things that we should do the same, like mail-in ballots. That's a good thing. However, voter registration works. That would be nice to have that all be the same. This is all in some of the federal, meaning across all states, Voting Rights Act. But then there's the actual mechanics, which leads to the resilience. That means if one county screws up, there's a glitch in one county, something bad happens, essentially the rest of the election is preserved. And we know we only need to go fix one county. That is why having different ways of managing the actual votes, they all need to be above board and straightforward, but that's why these differences matter. They improve our resilience so that our elections can continue and happen. So wait, let me put that soapbox back under the desk because you might be asking that question, and there I answered it for you. So in the 2020 election, again, this is when COVID was happening. Tens of thousands of people volunteered to work at the polls. Please take your mask. Even this year, I'm going to tell you, take a mask. But the efforts were essential, ensuring the election could proceed smoothly, and every eligible voter had the opportunity to cast their ballot. So you being there, making sure that ballots are not messed up. People can vote with the provisional ballot if there's a question about their standing, that there's no hijinks, that you're doing everything according to how your local election committee wants you to do it, election office wants you to do it. It's really important. Just so important. So if you have time, as we get closer, it's time now to put the word out. Go look at your local elections board and see if there's roles for you in terms of the election this year. And if you want to be a poll worker, it's a great way to provide that kind of service to your country. All right. So those are the biggies, from the littlest thing to bringing your brand to bear, to putting skin in the game and showing up to work at the polls, on the streets, in a campaign. That's all available to you. So how do you know what's right for you? That's what I kept coming back to when I was thinking about this. I'm like, well, if I'm new to this, I don't even know. What is it that's going to matter? Like, what are these things? What am I really committing to? Let's face it. That's what everybody wants to know. The PACE assessment, this political and campaign engagement assessment that I created, is super simple, and it considers the factors that most likely will affect whether or not the volunteer activity or the engagement is going to be right for you. So it's things like the working style, your availability, how much interaction can you handle, and how do you need to feel about yourself for doing it. When you come to the website, I want you to come and take this assessment and see what you think. I want you to tell me if it works. Like I said, it's simple. It's Cosmo. It's very simple, but it's enough to hopefully make you think about which of these jobs might be a great place for you to start. So I'm going to invite you to come look in the description of this pod. It should be a link to the assessment should be there. And I really would love to have your feedback on this, because I'm so excited about having you engage with this election, engage with our democracy, and find a way that makes you feel good about what we're doing and how we're moving forward. Thank you for listening to today's podcast. Share this with your friends who also need to get busy, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Thank you for listening to today's podcast. Make sure you subscribe and rate, and I'll be back with another episode really soon.